Hey guys, and welcome to today's Chet Chat. Today was a request for, I guess, my take on implementation of a new policy requiring police officers to have a certain amount of grappling experience, which I have absolutely advocated for in the past. I think grappling, specifically Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, but even looking at things like judo, sambo, stuff like that, is great because at the center point of grappling, even more so than sweeps, submissions, and everything, it's control. You will learn how to control people and to stay in a dominant position. And being in control, being in a dominant position will allow you to easily deploy other tools, other restraint techniques, and everything. But control concepts are always superior to individual techniques that can very easily be taught, but control is something that takes a long time to really develop and to learn it sort of intrinsically to where it becomes you just feel it, it's based on timing and sensitivity and that sort of thing. Anyway, so obviously any program would need, tweaking and whatnot over time, but at least as an initial outset, I would say that so any profession is required to have continuing education throughout the year. That's not a new concept. Teachers, lawyers, doctors, architects, accountants, they have to log a certain number of hours every year in order to keep their credentials. I don't see why it would be difficult to say that a law enforcement officer, in order to keep their law enforcement certification, has to log a certain number of hours of training, either specifically in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu or force on force combatives. Now, then the question becomes, where do they have to train, right? I think a good starting point would be to say that they have to submit essentially a timesheet signed off by their instructor, and that now who that instructor has to be. That instructor would have to be, I would say, a brown or black belt or higher, recognized by the IBJJF. So has to be an IBJJF certified brown belt or black belt. Because obviously, I mean, you can literally, I could go buy a black belt on Amazon today. That doesn't make me a black belt. But in order to, for someone who is IBJJF certified, and they've had to meet certain requirements and sort of peer review, if you will, that a certain number of hours per month. And I don't know what that number would be, but it would have to be something where you sit down and you say, okay, I mean, if we can get someone, um, you know, 4, 8, 10 hours a month, and because it's in service training, it's something that they could start incorporating as part of their workday. We don't want to put a burden or requirement on officers to do something in their spare time, um, because you know, I don't know. But if it was a mandatory training, I think that they would get more support from their department and saying, hey, we're going to cycle through like, once a week or once every 2 weeks. You're going to head off for a couple hours, go hit up this MMA gym, this jiu-jitsu gym, pick up a day class, pick up an evening class or whatever. And, you get paid for that, or you get comp time, or whatever the case may be. So where does that money come from, right? Because that's the thing. It's really easy to throw out these great ideas, but then it always comes back to, well, funding. Obviously, it could be on a state-by-state thing, but then each state would have to do it. The way to do it uniformly would be to give federal funds on the contingency that the states agree to this particular plan. And so, law enforcement gets some federal funding already. You could give sort of a grant and say, and now, then where does the federal money come from? That's a subject for a whole different video. I think there's a ton of federal waste, a ton. And we could sit here, I could name off things. 40% of military bases, from what I hear, are completely unnecessary. I've talked about the Department of Education. We could talk about certain, ATF departments, IRS. I have an idea of how to practically abolish the IRS. Um, but there's so much federal waste. This seems like this should be a priority. This really should be a priority right now, for both sides, right? Your BLM side, your Blue Lives Matter side. Everyone should be able to come together and say, making training available to officers, making non-lethal training available to officers should have bipartisan support. I mean, absolutely. I can't imagine someone saying no. That's a bad idea. Um, so anyway, that's sort of my idea. Is making it a contingency for receipt of federal funds, giving a grant, setting certain standards. Making it has to be BJJ or even I guess even wrestling. We could do that, but we just don't want people to start getting credit for going and doing taekwondo and uh, you know Aikido and stuff like that we know really doesn't work on the street. Um, but then again, we've all seen the Facebook comments. Jiu-jitsu doesn't work on the street either, so I guess there's that. But that's kind of a jiu-jitsu joke. But anyway, that's just my buddies asked about this idea, so I'm just kind of spitballing here. Hadn't really thought too much into it, but that's sort of where I'm at on that.